It's September 22nd, 1997, and Vince McMahon is gradually becoming one of the most hated men in professional wrestling and the most hated man in all of American wrestling in WWE. For context, this is the same man who would just a month and a half later be involved in an incident called the Montreal Screwjob, where it would famously be one of the most egregious acts of abuse of power ever by a wrestling promoter. This was the same man who, years prior, had a steroid scandal that nearly sent him to prison regarding his employees, and the same man who had shut down any chance of a workers' union for guaranteed pay for wrestlers in WWE. Controversial figure isn't even the word. Vince was becoming an all-out tyrant in the eyes of the general public. But the night he encountered something completely different. A man who had no care or tolerance for authority or powerful figures, a redneck from Texas named Stone Cold Steve Austin. And in the moments that followed, the audience in Madison Square Garden would witness something iconic, as the monarch-like figure would finally be taken down a peg. Stone Cold dropping the national villain, shattering the untouchable facade that Vince had built for years, in all of 3 seconds. The tens of thousands of fans in attendance and millions around the world would rejoice in celebration, because tonight, what the company had done was create a hero in Stone Cold. A true hero who would for years be loved by the entirety of wrestling fans. Could you imagine if it was your job to walk out into an arena of tens of thousands of people and then try to get those people to love you as much as you possibly could? It's a lot easier said than done. But that's the work life of a babyface wrestler. When it comes to villains in wrestling, or heels as you would call them, it's always way easier to get people to hate you than love you. But in my opinion, what's even more fascinating and difficult is the fascinating art of being a babyface in wrestling. How they somehow get us to love them, and how they channel emotion and inspiration relatable to our real day-to-day lives and turn it into their own stories and storytelling. One of the most fascinating things about professional wrestling is that at its core, it's simply just an art form. And art often imitates life. Not only that, art imitates the culture of the people, where those people are culturally and what resonates with people in a certain time period or moment. Imagine life in the 1980s, where the American dream is very much still a thing, accompanied by the rise of arcade video games, bold and colorful clothing, and the birth of the music video era. But the economy had started to switch in less a favor of the average American, and it started to more favor the wealthy class and materialism. And the villain in wrestling that perfectly encapsulated this at the time was the opposition to this villain was a man named Dusty Rhodes. Dusty represented the common working American in the 80s that were starting to be neglected by the American economy. He didn't look like the average wrestler or even your typical average wrestling top star. Dusty represented the American underdog. And funny enough, it'd be during this rivalry with Ric Flair where Dusty would deliver arguably the greatest babyface promo in wrestling history.
Ric Flair, the world's heavyweight champion. He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family. You don't know what hard times are, Daddy. Hard times are when the textile workers around this country are out of work and got 4 or 5 kids and can't pay their wages, can't buy their food. Hard times are when the auto workers are out of work and they tell them go home. And hard times are when a man has worked at a job 30 years. 30 years. They give him a watch, kick him in the butt and say, hey, a computer took your place, Daddy. That's hard time. That's hard time. I admit I don't look like the athlete of the day supposed to look. My belly's just a little big, my hand is just a little big, but brother, I am bad and they know I'm bad.
Dusty had perfectly encapsulated the emotion of the American working class and turned it into love and admiration for his fictional wrestling character. You can see narratives and stories like this come to life in something that I think wrestling shares a lot of similarities in: movies. Because in my opinion, there's an amazing contrast between an underdog 80s hero character like Dusty Rhodes and the underdog hero story and character of Rocky Balboa. Rocky is a 1976 cult classic where it covers Rocky Balboa, a small-time Philadelphia boxer who gets a once-in-a-life chance to fight the heavyweight champion Apollo Creed. As Rocky would only get the chance due to Apollo's original scheduled opponent coming up injured, Apollo would scramble for a last-minute opponent and replacement, with that being Rocky, with mainly the only reason of him being picked would be due to his nickname, the Italian Stallion. Despite being a working class nobody expected to lose against the ultra-wealthy undefeated champion, Rocky takes the champion to a split decision. A true underdog story, just like Dusty's, and when you take into account that both of these characters were two very loved heroes in the 80s, it's hard to say it's a coincidence. And that's what a great underdog hero and story does. It lets you buy into this character almost in a way that feels real, even if it obviously isn't. But what if it was real? What happens when a babyface blurs that line between fiction and reality and starts using real life admiration from a real life situation. The Yes movement took place and was centered around Daniel Bryan, an outstandingly talented wrestler that would always almost be at the peak of WWE. And the reason that he was always almost at the peak was due to the fact that WWE didn't believe in him as a tippity top star in real life. See, despite Daniel Bryan being one of the greatest wrestlers ever to touch a wrestling ring, Daniel, by WWE standards, was an undersized wrestler. Coming in at just 5'8" in real life and 210 pounds, Daniel didn't match the body physique or even look that WWE had in mind for a number one or even top guy. Their ideal image was usually someone over 6 feet tall, muscular, and with a larger than life look. And this would painfully show in Bryan's booking. Whenever he would gain a world title, the reigns would be short-lived. Whenever he would lose them, it would be in some of the most embarrassing ways possible. And whenever Bryan would gain momentum, the company would always do its best to cool it down. This would go on for years until one night the crowd would finally have enough. The 2014 Royal Rumble would occur to determine who would go to WrestleMania to fight for a WWE championship. And by this time, by far, the most popular and hottest person in the company was Daniel Bryan. And due to the Royal Rumble being a match with 30 participants, you would think Daniel Bryan would at least be in this match. But when it got down to that last entrant and it was time to see who was number 30,
he is a winner of the 2006 Royal Rumble. Right. Whoa, man. Mysterio sends Rollins flying.
it was at that moment that it became very clear to the audience what was happening here. Daniel Bryan was being systemically kept down by the company, and the crowd would immediately turn on the match, with them being legitimately so angry that they booed the most lovable person in wrestling, Rey Mysterio, and even the winner of returning Batista. It was clear WWE had their agenda. They wanted Randy Orton and Batista, two guys who fit the traditional WWE image of a top guy, in the main event for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. Immediately, fans would begin to outright display their straight up disgust, flooding social media with a bunch of outrage, to the point where even WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley would join the outrage and blitz WWE for their ridiculous tone-deaf decision. WWE had massively underestimated just how many people were behind Daniel Bryan. With WWE realizing they had a massive problem on their hands with the fans not reacting well to the WrestleMania main event of Batista vs. Orton, they would ultimately be forced to change course, with Daniel Bryan one night on Raw storming the arena with a sea of supporters, where they would hold up the show until Bryan's demand was met that he get a match with Triple H at WrestleMania. Triple H would grant the match, but with an added stipulation: the winner of the match would be added to the WWE Championship that same night at WrestleMania. And at WrestleMania 30, Daniel Bryan would not only defeat Triple H, but he would defy all odds at the end of the night with a storybook fairy tale ending, defeating Batista and Randy Orton also, and winning the WWE Championship. A real life event of someone being held down being turned into a story and giving professional wrestling one of the greatest moments ever. As inspirational and resonating as these babyfaces are, these are still babyfaces that work alongside the status quo, or even represented and fitted just in different ways in a different journey. Basically, they're still heroes who can be role models and are sometimes meant to be those role models. But what happens when a babyface rejects that status quo? What does it look like when a hero is born after being a villain and rejecting that status quo and being anti-establishment? You get Stone Cold Steve Austin, who we talked about earlier at the start of the video, who uses the audience's disdain for corporate authority, workplace rebellion, and what happens when everyday frustration finally snaps. And when it comes to this time in the 90s, that attitude is strikingly similar to the attitude of Peter Gibbons in the 90s cult classic Office Space. Office Space is a movie that follows Peter Gibbons, a burnt out software worker who hates his current corporate job. Suddenly, Peter visits a hypnotherapist who dies of a heart attack mid-trance, with this moment changing Peter for the rest of his life, with now Peter being left in a state of total blissful apathy, no longer caring about the consequences of defying his boss, and no longer having tolerance for corporate authority, with his carefree attitude genuinely bringing him a new sense of life. Peter's lack of care for any repercussions would encourage his fellow colleagues, Samir and Michael, who would set to be soon fired from the company. The three friends would end up devising a plan to siphon money from the company in exchange for their past years of everyday suffering. Unfortunately though, there'd be a hitch in the plan ruining the operation, with documents of the stolen funds being recorded, putting the trio at risk of being caught. But luckily for the boys, before anything is found out, the office and any documents of the stolen funds are burned to the ground by another disgruntled employee who had simply been pushed too far. With all the heroes and different types of heroes I've talked about, the sole similarity between all of them is that they make you believe, because in order to love babyfaces, you must first believe them. Take a character like Femi. On paper, a Nigerian tank of a man doesn't sound like anything unique or too special, but when you watch, from the moment that Oba appeared on TV, everything about him, from the way he walked, the way he talked, to the way he even carried himself in the ring, it all makes everything become so convincing in a way that makes you believe in Femi, and not just Femi, the dawn of a new era. With the way of Femi's way of speaking having you genuinely feel everything he says, his athletic and fast-paced style of wrestling being pure youthful and young explosiveness, and the way that he marches to the ring during his entrance, genuinely feeling like he's leading the charge, marching us into a new generation. This is the man who will lead us into our new and bright future. In my opinion, there's this beautiful contrast between wrestling, media, and people, because in a way they all imitate each other. In terms of babyfaces, in my opinion, they have the toughest job in the world. In terms of getting people to hate you, it's way easier than getting people to like you. So when I see these people and characters who put their all into resonating with the audience and it working, I can't help but find it absolutely inspiring, as well as I think we all do, because at the core of everything, our heroes are essentially an extension of us. They're usually the voices of the people and the representation of us, the audience, and it's because of that why we just can't help but love them.